Should we get started, Ernest? Some time ago, I was looking at African countries in general and then thinking, why are they in the plight that they're in? And I spent a lot of time thinking about that and thought to myself, well, that's the wrong question. Maybe the right question is, if you were president for the day, what would you do? And maybe it needs more than one day. But if you've got a corporation, you look at your advantages and then you try to figure out how to leverage your advantages in some way. And the key advantage that African countries have are their natural resources, but they're not monetizing them in a sustainable way. And, obviously South Africa has got a lot of gold. They had a great party for 70 years or 100 years, but almost all the gold is gone now. And my thinking was, if I was president for the day, I would try to figure out how to monetize those natural resources in a sustainable way. And then luckily along came Bitcoin, and I think more importantly, the blockchain. And so my thought was, how can you tokenize these natural resources so that you don't deplete the natural resource, and then you can reinvest some of those profits or gains back into the community to resolve some of those long-standing social problems that are existing. And so I've got a number of projects there. One is a gold mine, another is a river reclamation project. But the one we decided to start off with was a forestry project. And in particular, there's a forest in the Volta region of Ghana called Abatime. And this forest and I was there 2 weeks ago. It's a beautiful forest. It's probably our best carbon sink, the world's best carbon sink in terms of, mature trees being able to sequester carbon from the atmosphere. But they cannot monetize that forest in the normal way, which is through selling carbon offsets. And the reason why is because there's this rule called additionality, which means that if you're going to sell carbon offsets, then you must have a project that is funded by these carbon offsets that is creating new carbon sequestration rather than existing carbon sequestration. And so if they had cut down their forests 200 years ago and were now doing a reforestation program where they were planting new trees, they would qualify for these traditional carbon offsets. But because their forest is regarded as business as usual, they cannot monetize their forest using the traditional carbon offset programs. And let me take an aside here. So there's two types of carbon offsets. So first of all, a carbon credit is a permit that allows you to emit carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So California has a cap and trade program. And what that means is that organizations like the electricity company is allowed to emit a certain amount of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere every year. And then if they go over that limit, they have to buy carbon offsets from somebody else to counterbalance the excess. And so because this is a government regulated program, they're only allowed to buy those carbon offsets from a regulated exchange. And so these are called compliance carbon offsets. And so regulated organizations like the electricity company in California, they can only buy regulated or compliance carbon offsets to offset their excess. Now, at the same time, there's other organizations like Toyota and Amazon who say, look, we're just good corporate citizens. We don't have to offset our excess, but we're just voluntarily going to do this. And so there's a second market called voluntary carbon credits. And anybody can buy and sell voluntary carbon credits. But even though anybody can do this, typically a buyer will say, do you comply with one of these standards? So there's maybe 5 or 6 international standards out there that make sure that you're really sequestering carbon and the project isn't fake, etc. Now, all of those programs adhere to this concept called additionality, which means that if you've got a beautiful forest like the forest in Aberdeen, where that forest is sequestering carbon, whether there's a project or not, they cannot qualify for a traditional carbon offset program. And secondly, even if they could qualify, it could cost you $150,000, $700,000 or more to meet the requirements to actually comply with one of those programs. These are low income communities. There's no way they can afford that kind of money. And so what can they do? They've got no option. And it's actually breaking these communities apart because on one hand, you've got the youth who are kind of disenfranchised. They've got no jobs and they blame the elders for not being able to come up with a program to create jobs or monetize the forest in a sustainable way. And so it's actually pulling these communities apart. Now, additionality has a good concept behind it. And so these PhDs came up with this concept, and it was great in terms of saying that if, say, wind power in the US is improved to the point where the cost of producing energy using wind power is lower than the cost of producing energy by burning fossil fuels, if the cost of wind power is lower, then perhaps in the US, there's no longer a need to incentivize people to invest in wind power by offering carbon credits. And so the whole concept of additionality is driven from an American point of view, which really makes sense if you're a PhD in Berkeley or MIT. But the unintended consequence is that forests like the forest in Aberdeen is completely disadvantaged. And so when I looked at that particular problem, my thinking was, we've got to come up with a better way to provide equity and inclusion for these types of forests. And I was trying to find a way to do it within the framework of the existing carbon credit programs, and in the end figured out that I couldn't at least figure out a way to do that. And so my suggestion was to disrupt the existing carbon credit business by creating a whole new class of carbon credits and then target the crypto community as the customer. And so what it means is now there's a whole untapped supply channel out there, which are all of these forests that do not qualify for traditional carbon credits. And a lot of them are low-income communities, so we've got to figure out a way to enable them to be able to participate. And the only way to enable them to participate is to push down the certification costs to basically be zero. And there's a couple of interesting articles where there's World Bank programs. And in terms of getting some of these forests certified, they have, these really expensive consultants who fly out from Norway and they charge, 23,000 euros for 2 of many visits. And once you add up those visits and everything, it's easily $150,000, $200,000, $700,000 to comply. So they really cannot afford that. And so the question is, how can you push that cost down to zero? And there's a website called Global Forest Watch. And what they do is they use satellite technology and satellite imagery to basically look at the tree coverage all around the world. And then they use machine learning and artificial intelligence to do a calculation that indicates how much carbon is being sequestered in a specific area and how much carbon is being re-emitted. And so you can figure out what the net carbon sequestration is. Now, this is not as accurate as sending a person out with a tape measure to measure the circumference of a tree at the beginning of the year and the circumference at the end of the year to figure out how much carbon has been sequestered into into that tree trunk. But how accurate is that anyway? And so what we've decided to do is to create a new class of carbon offsets called digital carbon offsets. And we're using satellite technology from Global Forest Watch to calculate the carbon sequestration. And what we did is we had our team go out to the forest and actually demarcate the boundaries of the forest. And that creates a shape. We've input that shape into the Global Forest Watch database, and that has indicated that each hectare in the Abitiime forest sequesters approximately, and it's between 4 and 6 metric tons of carbon dioxide per year. And that equates to between 4 and 6, and we're just saying 5 voluntary carbon offsets per hectare. Okay. And again, this isn't using the traditional method of sending people out into the field. And some of these forests are in remote areas. And so you've got forestry on the top of a mountain, which is highly inaccessible. They've got a monkey sanctuary. They've got other areas that are protected. And maybe it's not a good idea for humans to actually go to some of those areas. But the point is that maybe we're losing a little bit in accuracy by using just satellite technology, but we're gaining a lot by eliminating the intermediaries and driving down the cost of measurement to $0. And so the Abitiime community has paid $0 to participate in this program. What we did is when I went out there, I actually took out a broker dealer, an SEC FINRA registered broker dealer, and he actually validated the right of sale. And so he spoke with the community, he spoke with the Forestry Commission, which is effectively the government, to make sure that this particular organization actually owns that forest and they're allowed to basically sell or monetize the carbon sequestration rights. And so that was one piece of the puzzle. The next piece of the puzzle is now how do you monetize that using some of these new blockchain type innovations? And the way we've decided to do that is to have an NFT sell, and then each NFT would map onto 1 hectare of forestry. And that NFT would convey all of the digital and virtual rights of that 1 hectare of forestry and allow the buyer to be able to use those digital and virtual rights in gaming applications, metaverse applications, however they choose. But it doesn't convey any of the physical rights to the trees or to the land, because that would be a security and that would be against SEC rule. And so, again, each NFT maps onto 1 hectare of forestry, and that 1 hectare of forestry has the equivalent carbon sequestration of 5 carbon credits. So you buy 1 NFT, you effectively have 5 carbon credits. And if you go to some of these websites, they've got these carbon credit calculators. The typical American emits about 17 tons of carbon dioxide per year. And this is based on how many international flights you have, how many domestic flights, you use a lot of electricity at home, and you answer all these questions, and then an answer comes out. And so for the typical American citizen, they would need to buy 4 or 5 of our NFTs to offset their personal carbon footprint. Now, the other big difference is that traditional carbon offsets are historical. And so when we go back to the electricity company and the cap and trade program in California, what the state government is trying to do is they're trying to say at the end of each year, this company should be carbon neutral. And so what that means is that when they figure out what their excessive carbon emissions are going to be, before the end of the year, they need to buy carbon credits and they need to retire them. So those carbon credits have to be historical. And I was thinking about this. I was thinking, so if I'm Toyota and I'm going to buy voluntary carbon credits, why would I buy historical ones? Why wouldn't I buy a projection of carbon credits into the future? And so with our new digital carbon credits, they're forward looking instead of backward looking. And so we're effectively selling with each NFT 5 carbon credits for 10 years into the future. And if you look at any studies, the World Bank, etc., Bank of England, they're all projecting that the price of carbon credits are going to go up from about $10 today to at least $100 each over the next few years. And so with this program, this NFT sale that we're projecting, it gives everybody an opportunity to basically lock in the price today, but then reserve those carbon credits for 10 years into the future. And if you're looking at gaming applications, for example, you wouldn't want to use carbon credits that have been retired in a gaming application. You're going to want to play games into the future and have carbon credits that project out into the future. So there's a number of differences between what we're planning to do and the traditional carbon offset business. In fact, it's completely different, and they're not going to like it, right? Because we're eliminating all these intermediaries who make all this money. We're looking into the future instead of looking back historically. We're eliminating this additionality doctrine, which they all believe in. But what we are delivering is equity and inclusion. Low-income forestry communities, for the first time, will be able to monetize their carbon sequestration in a way that enables them to pay for forest management activities to prevent illegal logging. And a lot of that illegal logging comes from their own youth who have no other way to make money. And it enables them to reinvest that money back into other forms of livelihood so that the disenfranchised youth will have a better alternative than illegal logging. So you then address the root cause of that problem. And so that's the concept that we've come up with. We think it's pretty unique. It's very different. It's disruptive. A lot of people are not going to like what we're doing because it's going to completely disrupt their existing mode of operation. But this is what we've decided to do to move forward with. And we've got the support, like I said, of this particular forest. We met with the Forestry Commission when we were out there. They said, look, we don't know if tokens and NFTs really exist, but if they do and you can make this work, we've got a number of other forests, that we would like to put into this program. And then this could be replicated in other countries, other parts of Ghana, and in other countries in Africa as well, and also South America, Central America, for all of these low-income forestry communities that do not qualify for traditional carbon offsets. And even if they did qualify, they could not afford the registration costs. So that's a high-level summary of what we're doing. I hope that's clear. I'm sure you're going to have lots of questions, and I'm all ears.
Um, yeah. Mark, rather than creating an NFT, why not just create one, well, not necessarily an NFT, but why not just convert existing carbon credits into a token, similar to what Moss Earth has done with Cello, right? So what Cello has done, because Cello is probably the greenest crypto at the moment, and excuse me, and what you can do is they now Moss Earth has tradable carbon credits. on the Celo blockchain, right? So you can actually offset your carbon credits through crypto by just purchasing the Mars Earth carbon credits. Is that something that we may be able to do?
Yeah, and some other organizations are looking at doing that. But the fundamental point is it a traditional carbon offset or is it not? And so is it a
Yeah.
historical carbon offset? And so
Yeah. It's an actual carbon credit. Like all they've done is just digitized it. That's all they've done.
right. So then the Aberdeen forest would not be able to meet or comply with that program. They would still be excluded. As soon as you say traditional carbon offset, then the Aberdeen forests and other forests like them are excluded. Yeah, and so we were looking at just doing a traditional NFT sell, and maybe I need to speak with Taddy about this because maybe there's a way to for Cello to actually enhance this program. But our approach was just to do a sell, an NFT sell on basically any blockchain. The underlying technology became irrelevant. But the reason it did become relevant is because Ethereum, the gas fees in Ethereum were just so high. So then we turned to a platform where the gas fees were low and we were pointed towards Polygon. But
Hmm.
one way to enhance our program would be to basically use is to attach some type of a staking program where people who actually buy these NFTs could then restake them into a program in some way and then continue to monetize them in additional ways. And so that's something we have not looked into.
Is that a need like from someone who is a smart contract specialist?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, we would need to speak to somebody who is a smart contract specialist, somebody who's who's got a lot of more expertise than I do in terms of staking to figure out whether that additional benefit could be bundled in. But that would be a huge enhancement.
I know. Have you guys, Ernest, has Hashed May been roped into this yet?
We can do this. So we actually just received a grant from Celo, and we're building a token creator, a platform to be able to create tokens, right? Smart contracts, and we've got an insurance smart contract, we have a wedding contract, we have a will contract, and we have a basic token contract. We have a child a key bank contract, smart contract as well. And what we can do is we can actually add an NFT contract specifically for this. And because it's based on carbon credits, Cello is definitely going to be interested in this as well. So we can have a on the platform. It'll basically what the platform does. It enables people with no coding experience to develop a token in less than sort of like 10 minutes. So you'll be able to create an NFT, the NFT that you're speaking about, um, on the platform, and we definitely can do for you, Mark, for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
And then for the art, would you be able? Are you guys sourcing the art from over there, from artists over
So
there?
yeah, so we actually um, put together I hired a artist to actually create the initial art, and then and it was almost like the typical 10K NFT type art, and then got speaking to somebody else who actually came up with a really interesting concept, and so the original art we're actually going to use as a giveaway prior to the full release. And then there's actually going to be a surprise for the full release, and maybe I need to actually tell you in order to answer your question. And that is the final art is going to allow the buyer to select options on the actual art. And so So it's more than carbon offsets. And so I'm presenting it as carbon offsets, but in reality, what we're trying to do is we're trying to match an unserved market with untapped capital. And I'm saying the untapped capital is the crypto community who are trying to find a way to do good. And this is a way to use crypto to do good, but it's more than just the carbon offsets. It's also using some of the financial benefits to reinvest in the form of a social innovation studio. Where in the long run, what we will do is we'll speak to the community and say, okay, what are the problems that you're facing? And they'll come up with a list of problems, and it's basically the same problems over and over again. And then in this community, we're going to have these smart crypto people who have got all these, blockchain and DAO and stablecoin skills who can solve those problems in a completely different way, reimagine solutions to pre-existing problems, like we've done with carbon credits. Just come up with a completely different solution. And so the initial point is selling NFTs, which raise funding to help finance forest management activities. And then any excess over the basic requirements of finance forest management activities. And by the way, financing those forest management activities may help the forests to qualify for traditional carbon offsets in the future, and then sell other parts of the forest or traditional carbon offsets for the other parts of the forest. But basically, once you meet the basic need of forest management, then any funds we raise above that can be deployed as a social innovation studio, to help some of the local youth in terms of figuring out entrepreneurial ways to solve those existing problems in the community, by pairing them with experts in the community from the US, from the Western Europe, crypto experts from Africa who can completely reimagine solutions to those pre-existing problems using blockchain type innovation. And now I know this is a lofty goal, but you've got to set high goals and see how close to those high goals you can get.
Hi, Mark. This is D-side. I'm kind of new around here. And first of all, kudos on your innovation and creativity and just ingenuity to come up with all this. And your presentation was excellent, very clear, really clarified a lot of ideas for me. Two questions about carbon offsets. First of all, is there and you may have explained this, but I didn't understand it so clearly. Is there a standard market for carbon offsets now? And is there a market for carbon offset futures? To me, that's the most interesting. And I don't come from a finance background, but I can appreciate that carbon offsets will likely be more expensive in the future than they are now.
Yeah, and so there's two existing markets. There's the compliance market, and so organizations that are regulated by a government entity in terms of a cap and trade program, they're forced to buy what are called compliance carbon offsets. And those compliance carbon offsets are regulated in a different way, and they're only sold on a regulated exchange. So the electricity company in California, who's operating under the California Cap and Trade Program, they could not buy carbon offsets from us. They can only buy regulated carbon offsets from a regulated exchange. So our solution that we've come up with is not directed to the compliance market. It's directed towards the voluntary market. So the second market is this voluntary market, where individual people, organizations can just say, we're not regulated or forced to do this, but we're nice people. We like, we believe in conservation. And so we're just volunteering to buy carbon offsets, and anybody can sell those carbon offsets. And in the past, there's been all sorts of problems with people doing all sorts of scammy things. And so that's what led to having these third party organizations who will verify that these are real projects and they're really sequestering carbon. But then the question is, how do you really measure that carbon sequestration? And so when Tesla is selling carbon credits, how exactly are they measuring how much carbon emissions they're eliminating? And, even with trees, people actually, when they go out with the tape measures and they measure how much the tree trunk of a certain tree has increased, and so how much carbon has been added. Well, how much carbon has actually gone into the soil? And so how do they measure the amount of carbon that's gone into the soil and the amount of carbon that's been re-emitted from the soil? And so it's not as precise as the industry seems to make it out to be. And so spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, to get to a level of accuracy that to me is misleading, do you get to a point of diminishing returns where you can just do what we've said and say, let's just use satellite technology and artificial intelligence? And it's not us, it's a third party called Global Forest Watch, use their technology to estimate the carbon sequestration. And so my goal was to drive down the cost of measurement and the cost of using intermediaries to zero. And then that enables anybody to qualify. And that's when we get to equity and inclusion, plus or minus 30 meters. And so we're looking at a resolution of 1 hectare. So plus or minus 30 meters is way better than we need, because we're selling at the hectare level. But they're talking about improving their resolution much more than that. And it will improve over time. And so we're going to be the first organization that uses their technology in that way. And again, their technology is not designed to be used in that way. They came up with this concept because they're trying to help governments and organizations find people who are doing illegal logging. And so, when they're looking at tree cover, yes, they're calculating carbon sequestration, but they can also determine whether a path has been cut through the forest and whether roads have been cut through the forest, so that people are creating a pathway to move heavy equipment into a forest to do illegal logging.
Yep.
And so they have all these types of alerts. They look for forest fires and they generate alerts if there's forest fires. And so they're doing a lot of great stuff, including measuring carbon sequestration. But no one has tried to use their technology in the way that we're planning to use it right now.
Right. And do you have a sense of what the market is for voluntary carbon offsets?
Yeah, and so there's standard research that is out there. I can't quote you any numbers, but I'll be able to find some research that indicates what the total volume is now. And in fact, probably in some of my references, I already have that. What is the total volume for the compliance markets and the total volume for the voluntary markets? That's standard information. I just don't have it on the tip of my tongue.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate everything you presented today. It was great.
Yeah. And by the way, these are pretty mature industries. And the thing I don't understand, I can understand that for the compliance market, that you want historical carbon offsets because you want the electricity company to say at the end of the year 2021 that they had this excess of emissions and they've retired these carbon offsets that are associated with projects that happened in 2021. And so I understand that for the compliance industry, that it makes sense for carbon offsets to be historical. But for some reason, they just carried that over to the voluntary market as well. And so if I'm Toyota and I'm trying to make myself look good and I want to put on my annual report that we're carbon neutral, then why wouldn't I want to be able to say, not only are we carbon neutral for the year 2021, but we're showing our commitment to the future to buy future carbon offsets for the next 10 years. And for some reason, I haven't seen anybody else doing that.
Well, ultimately, that's going to depend on the social pressure and the return on investment to them to
Yeah,
to present that,
yeah,
and that's probably building.
yeah. And by the way, Ernest, I was listening to some of the historical podcasts from Bankless DAO, and I listened to the Klima one. And what I have is there's a section in there where Klima actually talks about additionality and the advantages of it. But and again, I think people had great intentions when they came up with this concept, and they explain well the benefits of additionality. But a lot of times when people in the US and the West come up with these great ideas, there's always these unintended consequences. And again, when I went out to the Aberdeen forest and I said, hey, I got this wonderful concept, they kept asking me the same question, which was, are you going to take our land away? I'm like, why would they ask me that question? And then what I figured out later on is that there's a number of NGOs that went out there and they basically said, because of additionality, the only way to have carbon offsets is to plant new trees. And they said, okay, so we're going to have a program to plant new trees. And what do you need to plant new trees? You need land. Where do you get land from? The existing owners. So basically, they were taking land away from the existing owners to plant new trees because they couldn't monetize the existing forest. Yeah, sorry for going on so long. I'm really passionate about this. And so every Thursday for the next 4 or 5 weeks, we're going to have one of the team members from the Ave Time community to come out and speak for about 20 minutes and then have 10 minutes of questions. And so that will be at 9 a.m. Pacific time every Thursday, starting this Thursday, the 11th of November. Can I just make one more point, Ernest? And I know I've already taken up too much of everybody's time. But if I look at what could have helped us, and the situation that I see in some of these African countries is that they've got a lot of natural resources, they've got a lot of skills, and people want to do good, and people are entrepreneurial. And now we've been given this gift, the blockchain, and in particular NFTs. This is a whole new way to monetize these assets that are pre-existing. But what we don't have or didn't have was the marketing skills to put together an effective NFT release. Yet I look at the Bankless DAO, I look at Bankless Africa, and I see all the skills that are there to provide that service. I was looking at, the graphical help that we received from Jen yesterday. I had to go and speak to all these people on Fiverr and stuff like that to get that type of support. And so, again, I would propose that Bankless Africa or the Bankless DAO provide, offer almost like a launch team that can help, that can provide this as a service. And you come up with a pricing mechanism, whatever that needs to be. And then, people like me can come up with these business solutions, these business models, and then make a deal to use this service to monetize those assets or that opportunity in a very specific way. I see a lot of value in either Bankless DAO or Bankless Africa being able to offer that as a service.
That's why I'm here.
Definitely with it. Mark, just a
All
quick
right.
question. So,
Mhm.
in terms of the NFT, um, would it be fractionalized NFT or would it be visual NFT?
So the line cracked up a little bit. I think you're asking about whether the NFT would be fractionalized.
Or
Yeah,
visual.
yeah.
No, it will not be fractionalized. One NFT would wrap around 1 hectare of forestry.
Okay.
And you know what we've got a geologist right now who's actually mapping out the forest. And what we're trying to do is have a actual specific 1 hectare of forestry mapped to a specific NFT. And so effectively, the carbon sequestration would then be non-fungible because it
Okay.
would be linked to a specific geolocation.
Right.
And so your carbon credits might be in the northeast of the forest, and my carbon credits might be in the southwest of the forest. And so they're not actually the same. And, you know, my 1 hectare of land may be close to a waterfall. Your 1 hectare of land may be close to a monkey sanctuary. And so essentially what we're doing, because traditional carbon offsets are fungible. It doesn't matter whether you get that carbon offset from Peru or from Sweden. It represents 1 metric ton of carbon sequestration. What we're saying is, oh no, the your NFT maps to a particular hectare of forestry, and here's the characteristics of that 1 hectare of forestry. And those characteristics may be different to the 1 hectare next to it, or another hectare that may be 1 kilometer away. And that's a piece we're still working on to actually tie each NFT to each individual hectare. And that's what we're finalizing right now.
Nice.
So yeah, so this would
Okay.
actually be the first non-fungible carbon offset.
Hmm.
And there can be potentially mutable attributes that change over time with the updates in the, you know, growth of the forest.
So, do you think it would be a good idea to actually develop a carbon NFT marketplace? Because you would sort of then need it.
Well, you would need a shopping cart at minimum, but yeah, eventually that's a no-brainer. Like, why not? Especially once you got a proven way to track your NFT to actual physical resource and create a framework for virtual rights management, or relationship
Right.
really management.
Hmm. Because it's
Actually, you just take it to the synthetics exchange, wrap it, and it's on synthetics. Like, you could have a marketplace, but you can just wrap it with synthetics, and you essentially got derivatives once you have the mappable relationship depending on the
right.
smart token contract. So now this wouldn't
Okay.
be, it's not a currency, so you probably don't have to worry about a lot of legal things around whatever, like you might with Bitcoin or Ethereum or some crypto or whatever. But yeah, it's like this is what smart contracts are designed for, essentially. And it definitely sounds like Cello has a pretty nice framework for developing NFTs. I know on like the Wax blockchain, like other platforms or other games will let you stake on their platform as long as you're like a verified artist in the community. So like my NFTs, I can't stake in a game because I'm not a verified artist, but other people in the community are verified, and so you know you're you don't necessarily need a staking mechanism already in place. You would potentially maybe just you know get verified through the Cello community and get whitelisted, and then you would get kind of recognition on other dApps and blockchains and integrations and whatever else happens.
Right. Okay.
And then so if maybe sometimes, so if we're doing these events on Thursday that Mark is setting up, Toddy, would you be able to present something next Tuesday or Monday so that we kind of have two cultural events going on through the week, and maybe even something that's for time zone specific, or whatever you want to do, whatever you're comfortable with. You stay up late, you don't
Yeah.
sleep.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. I don't.
Yeah,
We can
and
do
then
that,
we
yeah.
got and then as far as Bankless Africa group powwow, yeah, I can start sharing the website once that's done and start getting a list of attendees, and yeah, probably get some help from the flag bearers, and Jen can report back to us what any bigwigs think about it. And I'll be no, and I'll
I mean,
get the recording of this. Well, Jen works. I'm never in Design Guild or Ops or Devs and um, Academy. So that's one of the things when working in the DAO too, is like,
mm-hmm.
Not everybody hangs out in the same space, and it's good. That's why this is how you build consensus. So
Yeah, I mean, between if you guys need any video work, the AV group, because I'm in AV, and I can either I do video work really, really slowly, but there's the people in AV are really, really fast at it. So,
we have
but yeah,
we have a repository of stuff for this particular project that Mark can share.
Yeah, we shot some video out in the field, but as you mention it, I've actually just written 4 very short scripts that are about between 20 and 40 seconds. And again, this is something where, I'm talking to, somebody on Fiverr to make these videos almost like advertisements. And so, I would love to share those initial versions of those scripts with you. And if that's something that the audio visual team would be interested in looking at, then that would be great.
For the
yeah.
record too, Jen, there's been no like official decision on like the best way to divide up, to share NFTs like with Bankless for the, support. So like any ideas is on the goal. Mark essentially just needs a number. I'd be the easiest to come up with a number would be to figure out a Discord server footprint and start there. But it can be, distributed between anybody that supports the project. But, Mark would just give the DAO, the group, however many NFTs, and then, the DAO or whoever was mostly involved would, figure out how to distribute them or hold on to them, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see. I'd love to get some NFTs from artists that were collected or created from over there. That would be amazing, like in the community. That would be amazing, because it's like, oh yeah, I could whip together some NFTs, but that kind of is like, well, not really faithful to the project, Like I'm doing this because it's quick and fast and we can get it out there and done, but I think if you're going to have like a visual NFT, like at least a single artwork, but the gamification, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's a different thing.
Yeah. The only thing is that's been done by people over here. I think the organizations either based in, they sound Canadian, but they said they're based in Philadelphia. I think they're actually based, maybe out of Toronto.
That's cool though.
Yeah.
It takes a village, as they say.
Yeah.
I need that reminder daily with my child sitting next to me watching YouTube. So, okay, it worked. If y'all are watching my stream as I'm trying to figure out how to make the little robot guy 3 colors. It worked.
All right. So I'm gonna end Craigbot and OBS. Yeah. And then I'll try to get a recording of this tomorrow.
Cool.
Right
are you guys going to do like any sort of grant proposal? Or is that too early to start even thinking about that kind of thing?
So Bankless Africa has a proposal to get funding so that they can, start doing projects and stuff. There's definitely, right now it's just marketing support. It's that bringing the marketing for work from that local community, out to the global, DAO space, and beyond. So I think it's really cool that it's a labor exchange for something that will have value. Like you can, and it's one of the opportunities I see with the getting the folks in the DAO onboarded to Cello in particular is that, so like in their Telegram, I was able to, basically create like 2 contest bounties and pay out in Cello. And it's, it didn't put any selling pressure on bank. It was easy to do, didn't cost an arm and a leg. And they're just in Telegram. So it's like to build a relationship with, I want to be where they're at. Not back here from the DAO saying, come on in here, come over here.
Yeah.
I want to, not really. I got a little education proposal in for a Cello workshop to the Education Guild for their mentors. That's to put some money to some bank into, Bankless Africa a little bit before their proposal goes through, so they can just start, using it. And I think we can get bank on Cello, just like the banks on Polygon. That
Yeah,
that
we
would
can for sure.
there's probably
And
more can we do this together kind of things than can you give us bank to do things.
Yeah.
we actually can do that and have a yield for where so when you tip people, you can actually have incentive funds where rather than just keep your bank, you can actually put your bank into a yield fund, fall into that educational program that we were talking about. Ernest. So basically,
Yep.
your bank is not sitting there; it's actually generating more bank and seller as well.
Yep. And there's another thing is I'm trying to get Chinese translation for these events as well. So I've been talking to the Chinese Translation Guild and a new person to the DAO that can translate. And there's some Bankless India folks that are interested in keep popping into Bankless Africa. So I'm pretty sure where the next 500 million folks are getting onboarded into DeFi and stuff. It's just inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
And I like some of these opportunities and the things that I think about this because it's like we just have to get in, we just have to already be in spaces where people are getting onboarded in their communities, or by their communities already. And there'll be less friction, the more we're able to meet them where they're adopting Web3.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, if it's already working, why reinvent the wheel if it's already working? Right?
Yep.
So
And ultimately we're doing all the things, but the things I like to focus on is where I can just be like, oh, cool. Yeah, just come hang out here. People are coming. Start a party. Chill.
perfect.
By the way, Ernest, do we have any data scientists in the DAO?
We have the Analytics Guild.
We do. And there are probably some researchers with more, traditional expertise than Web3 expertise. So that's definitely an easy thing to inquire about.
Yeah, because
And
we actually. Go ahead.
oh yeah, and if not in this DAO, they'll know somebody in another DAO.
Right.
Probably does.
Because we're actually looking for a data scientist right now in Ghana to work with our geologists, and I just realized that there's probably someone here who could actually take that data and do the analysis that we're trying to do.
Yeah, I know you find anybody in Friends with Benefits that's active, and you can or raid guild, and you can find what you're looking for. But yeah, it's probably an easy thing to ask around for in the guild. If you can send me a little bit more info on the description of what you actually need, I can
Yeah, I'll
inquire.
write a paragraph. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.